You don't need. Well, I guess it helps from a perspective to say, here's the things that are already in place, and as long as I don't know, whatever. I don't really know the point I was getting at there.
Cut that.
And 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Poutine Politics, Canadian issues served with cheese curds. My name's Adam.
My name's Mark.
Your name's what?
Mike? No, Mark.
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 Where's Mike?
You tell me.
Oh, okay. Well, Mike's not here. One of the difficulties of trying to record on Canadian Thanksgiving weekend. As a result, Mark had to pinch hit for Mike because Mike's got a family. Today, we're going to talk about the Conservative Party of Canada's platform for this election because, thankfully, they released it just in time for us to talk about it for our last episode before the election actually happens. Before we get there, a couple of quick notes. I want to say thank you to everybody who has been listening. Our listenership has been going up quite a bit since the last time I mentioned it, probably about a month ago. A lot more listeners in a lot more major cities. Last time I checked, Hamilton is still winning, just barely, so keep it up, but Toronto's right behind. We've picked up some more listeners out west as well, thanks to the people in Vancouver, Edmonton, and Calgary. I'm surprised that the people in Alberta are still listening to us so far, but I guess we're doing a good job. we're not making them too upset yet. So anyways, I'm glad that you've enjoyed listening so far. Keep on listening. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell a stranger. Poutine Politics is available pretty much on any platform that you can listen to a podcast. We're on YouTube as well. Just to cover as well, we have a Patreon page, so patreon.com/Poutine Politics. What we release there is the uncut versions of the episodes. So there are certain items that may drop out of the versions of the episodes that we release through the regular platforms. So if you're interested in listening to those, all it takes is as little as $1 a month donation, and you can get some of that additional information from us. That's all the self-promotion for now.
Those uncut episodes probably are helpful for the platforms where you're cutting down 50% of what you talk about.
Yeah, that's true. Case in point, last week's episode on the Liberal Party platform ended up about 30 minutes shorter after we cut out some of the things that we talked about, or just to try and get it into a concise platform that's a little bit easier for people to listen to. So there is some additional information in that uncut version that people might be interested in. Let's get started. Before we dive into specifics, general overview of this platform, what do you think?
I think this platform has a lot in it that is very good. Some of the things, they're not my point of view, but I can respect them. If I'm making fun of it, I would say it's a partly conservative party platform.
What do you mean by that?
There are things in here that when you think of little c, it's kind of going against little c. There's extra levels of certifications or just things that they want to add to the government that we don't necessarily have, that I don't know if we need, but from my perspective, probably is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a section in here where they mention we're going to reduce red tape and we're going to reduce regulations, but then they also say, but we need to create these regulations over here. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I know.
So the platform comes out and you have Justin Trudeau going around saying, you don't release your best work on a Friday before the holiday. It doesn't exactly work that way. Generally speaking, you release bad news that you don't want to discuss.
You fire people on a Friday afternoon.
You fire people on a Friday afternoon, yes. You talk about layoffs. Anyway, I don't think that fits this scenario because Andrew Scheer is still going to have stops. The media are still going to ask him questions about it. In a way, this is actually a good time to release it, as much as I don't like it because it's so late. You're 9 days out, so your platform is going to be talked about for the majority of those 9 days. And people are going to be talking about it at home during the Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not a bad thing.
It seems like a good political, quote-unquote, ploy to do it that way because of the fact that not only is it on people's minds during Thanksgiving weekend, but it's the most recent thing in people's minds leading into the election week, exactly. I guess, as it were, as a whole.
Yes.
It could give them an advantage in numbers in the sense that now that our information is front of mind, maybe more people will vote for us because it just triggers something in their head that conservative.
Exactly.
And that's it.
Yeah. There are things from the Green Party platform that I cannot remember because it was as early as it was.
Well, and the NDP platform was released in June. They only just released their PBO costing sometime in the last week as well.
I think it was Friday as well.
It might have been Friday as well. Yeah. Their platform's been out since June. Now I can start going, right?
Yeah, let's get started on that.
All right. So the first item that the conservative platform starts with is this universal tax cut. On the one hand, I'm okay with any reduction in taxes. On the other hand, I guess in comparison to the Liberal plan for increasing the basic personal exemption, this one doesn't have a dollar amount limit to it. It's just a reduction of the first tax bracket. It's going to help a lot of people. And it's certainly going to help people in the lower and lower middle income classes most as a percentage of their income. But this does reduce taxes for everybody.
Right. So for that single person that is only earning, let's say, $35,000, they're only saving $437, but that millionaire is saving the full amount on that $47,000.
Right.
So you're helping the millionaire. Yeah, it's a smaller percentage, but do you need to help the millionaire?
And yeah, exactly. And that's where I said that as a percentage of income, the lower income person is going to feel it more. They're going to feel the benefit more. But the benefit doesn't need to go to the person making, $1 million. I've like, without disclosing my income, I'm not the kind of person that needs this tax cut. Again, the less taxes I have to pay, I feel I'm fine with that. But I don't feel like I need this benefit.
Right. We're both in the same situation where I don't feel like our family needs a tax break in this sense. When I was earning less, this would have been wonderful.
Absolutely. Repeal the carbon tax. We knew that was going to be on their list. I'm going to skip that one. We don't have to talk about that one. Removing the GST from home energy bills.
I like this idea.
Yeah, that's fine.
It, like they say in the platform, it's a necessity. We have to heat our homes. We live in Canada.
Okay, it does say all home energy for primary residences. Yeah, okay. Because the reason why I questioned it is because they say heating your home is not a luxury; it's a necessity. And it's like, well, that's just heating.
Yeah. So
yes, okay,
now,
fine.
This is going to be a nitpicky thing. As much as I think this is a good idea that we should just do this, I latch on to they use the word luxury.
Yeah.
And go, wait a second, who has more heating bills? People that have giant homes.
Yeah.
So it is helping everybody. It's something that we should do. But it was just something that was funny. There's plenty of things in the platform that make me go, I don't know if they read this 3 times over and thought about it from a different perspective.
Right. The only other reason why I looked at it and said, is this necessarily a good idea, is that if we want to look back, and I know I'm not going to be like Harper bad, but the previous conservative government reduced the GST by 2 points. And just on that alone, before the 2008 recession, we went from having a surplus that we could use to pay off the debt that everybody's complaining about now, again, and essentially went to either a just barely balanced budget or a bit of a deficit. And then the 2008 crisis happened, and the government lost $13 billion in revenue off of that 2-point cut. Maybe there's enough cuts other places. I mean, again, their platform's costed, so they're saying there's enough cuts in other places, but
it's costed. But if you read the CBO's report, something that has me worried is, from their perspective, they might catch some heat because the CBO report says anything that's, I want to say it's 2023 onward, they rate as a high uncertainty that this is accurate.
Absolutely.
So what they're saying is there's things that have not been announced that they're taking as assumptions. They're also taking into assumption that our GDP is going to keep on growing. But right now, when we live, we're in fear of a recession. There's a lot of talk about a possible recession.
And if anything, it's going to happen right before a U.S. presidential election, because that's when it happened in 2008.
Well, yeah, and there's a little bit of grain of salt with that, because uncertainty creates it, right? And generally speaking, before countries do have elections, there's a little bit of uncertainty in markets and their dollar value and things like that. And it's not until after the election happens and then the companies and the investors know,
Yep.
okay, I can trust this person that's in power.
Yep.
So
Oh, yeah.
there's a possibility that you're right with that. That's actually relevant in that as we go through the platform, you'll see that there's more things, or there are things in it that are saying we need to get away from the United States. And really, we should have identified this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that we need to get away from the United States because they've gotten away from us. They need
Right,
things
okay.
like our fuel.
Yeah.
They don't anymore.
No.
They've grown their fuel creation a ton.
Yep.
And there are other areas that we as a resource nation have provided them in the past that no longer do. Therefore, our resources are worth less.
Right.
So another example is we're trying to get trade partnerships with China and Asian markets
Yep.
because the U.S. doesn't need it anymore.
Right. But Asia might or does,
Yes.
especially if they want to move away from coal.
And that's exactly it with the liquefied
Liquefied natural
fuels.
gas, yeah.
Right. So the U.S. doesn't need it anymore. That's
Right.
why we have surpluses now.
Yep.
So that's why it's in the platform.
It's in,
as-
yeah,
as
absolutely.
something that they want to do.
Which again is part of the platform that I don't have a problem with. We need more trade partners.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the "What's Old is New Again" section of the platform, introduce the green public transit tax credit. So reintroduce the public transit tax credit and slap the word green on in front of it and make everybody feel good. So a note that I wanted to make here. What was it? In a Finance Canada evaluation. So this is notes from the Parliamentary Budget Office called A Primer on the Public Transit Tax Credit from 2012. So the original public transit tax credit was introduced
2009.
2009, was it? Yeah, okay. So it was during the previous Conservative government, and then this note came, or this primer came out while the Harper Conservatives were still in power. So essentially says that the federal public transit tax credit did not materially increase ridership, and it is unlikely that the elimination of that credit will materially affect ridership choice. So while it was a handy credit to have, it probably didn't do what it was supposed to do, which was hopefully increase ridership, reduce traffic, reduce increased emissions from cars and other transportation, and provide people a tax benefit at the same time. It basically just sounds like they're planning on reintroducing the same thing.
They are. It's the exact same percentage.
Yeah.
When I was reading through this, I got stuck on the increase of 59.5% and thought, that's a pretty large increase. Or is it? I don't know how many people there are that are using transit. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I dug up the actual research that was based on, found it. It's pretty easy to find. It's on StatsCan. And I was curious, like, did other forms decrease? No. During the same time period, car use increased by 28%. So less. Maybe it's because less people could afford to. Maybe we had more people living in urban areas. Mm-hmm. Either way, obviously other things decreased, but not car usage.
Right.
So that's what they're talking about in this. They're reducing the congestion in the traffic. That's part of the goal. But it's a 20-year period. That tax credit was in place for approximately half of it. So did it do anything during that time frame? No. The study that you mentioned is mirrored by StatsCan, saying that it didn't have the effect that they wanted. Another thing, now it is in the platform that they want to increase the TTC and other forms of transit, mass transit.
Yeah, like more infrastructure dollars towards them, yes. Yeah.
But with what we have right now, transit average ride is 48 minutes.
Yeah.
And the average commute's 25 minutes. So you want more people to commute, which is going to increase that ride.
Yeah.
Instead of take their car. We don't take our car because it's cheaper. It's an expense that we pay because it lets us get to work faster, lets us get home faster so we can do the things that we want to do at home.
Yeah.
So if I'm driving my car and I see this, I don't think I'm going to use the transit. I think, great. The other 50% of the people that are on the highway are going to use transit. But the thing is, everyone is thinking that. So therefore, no one takes the transit because of this incentive. It doesn't get done what they want to get done.
What was the thought just going through my head? It's like, if everybody thinks that everybody else is going to do it, then nobody's going to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the bystander effect.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't remember if it was a StatsCan thing, but I remember when they had originally announced this credit, I did see something saying that, yeah, during the original public transit tax credit, ridership on average increased like 1.5% to 2%.
Yeah, so
Which
the
wasn't
study
much, right?
that Adam's referring to in the StatsCan is saying that the money that the government puts into this is not an effective return on investment.
Yeah.
I like the idea, but if it's not an effective return on investment, you're just wasting my tax dollars. But with that said, it is money that's going to people that can't necessarily afford a car.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's where I'm
there's
fighting
so-
with myself on it.
And there's always going to be people using public transit.
Yeah.
To do with housing, extending the mortgage amortization period, so extending maximum amortization on first-time home buyers to 30 years. It doesn't solve the problem of people being able to afford a house, though.
So, yeah, it doesn't. It's actually worse. Yes, on a monthly basis, it's cheaper.
You still got to come up with a down payment, though.
You still got to come up with a down payment. I don't want to get in the way of people that want to do this, but I was watching the CBC's face-to-face with the leaders things that were going on, and there were moments that just made me cringe because the citizens they had on it were, when Scheer gave this as an example of something that they were going to do, the gentleman was super excited about it, and I felt for him, but at the same point, like, if he has a house that he wants to buy that's $300,000, if you change from a 20-year mortgage to a 30-year mortgage, you are doubling the amount of increase of interest that you're paying. You are buying your house twice over by making that change.
Yeah.
Instead of paying $200,000 on a $300,000 house, you are spending $300,000 of interest. You're not getting that money back. You're paying to borrow it.
Which is also the funny thing when people talk about real estate for investment is the fact that, oh, I own the house for 15 years and from when I bought it to when I sold it, I made $200,000. Okay, but how much interest did you pay on the mortgage?
Yeah.
Like, I get that people have to pay interest on their mortgages. That's just a cost of owning the house. But that's exactly it. That's got to go into whether or not you made money on it. And so case in point again, if you just add longer amortizations for first-time home buyers, okay, great. First of all, as long as they're in a market that they can afford to buy the house, that's great. But now they're paying more for the house over time, especially if they stick in the same house over that 30 years.
Yeah, that was the other moment that made me cringe. I felt for the person a lot, but with one of the other leaders, she was begging the leader, I forget which one, I want to say it was Elizabeth May, to make a change so that she could afford to live in the city that she lived in. Mm-hmm. Maybe you just can't live in that city.
I don't think the Conservatives said anything about like a vacancy tax or a foreign ownership tax or anything like that.
No, but one of the things that they mentioned that is probably a good thing is they want to open up Crown-owned lands to development.
No, yeah, so you're right. So the next part, make surplus federal real estate available. So they were saying to increase supply of housing, we'll review the federal government's extensive real estate portfolio of 38,000 buildings.
Yeah, I was confused about that one because they say make real estate available, and I thought they were talking about for development, but then they say it's 38,000 buildings.
It could be converting those buildings from being office space to being some sort of apartment, condo style, whatever.
Right, just retrofitting it to be instead of a warehouse or an office.
Yeah, kind of like how schools get turned into apartments.
Yep.
Old school, they'll do that with old schools. So it could be very similar to that. So again, I mean, it makes sense, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
Or we might see where it goes. All right, more money in your pockets for kids. So make maternity benefits tax free. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So the liberals and conservatives are both talking about this, but they're different. They're different policies. So the liberal one is basically saying, you know those EI maternity benefits you get? Here you go. Here's the money. They're tax-free at source. The conservative policy is, here's your maternity benefits, But under these circumstances, you'll receive a tax credit for those maternity benefits.
Yeah, that's true. I prefer, in any case, to have it up front. I think it's
Yeah.
just better for the people that need it.
The plan to make maternity benefits tax-free is a great plan. Because the liberal plan does it at source, I feel that of the two, it's better. But it's not to say that this one's bad, right?
No, this was one of those things that, as someone that doesn't have a kid, I read it and went, "What? How are we not already doing that?
Yeah,
How are we double dipping on people that are having kids?"
yeah. Because we are. The supporting adoptive parents, so introducing a 15-week EI adoption leave, modeled on maternity leave. Again, why weren't we doing this already?
I know.
Why couldn't adoptive parents couldn't take parental leave?
The other one, a little bit further down, I could not believe it's beyond me that if you're on paternal leave or maternal leave and your child unfortunately passes away, how are we saying you have to go back to work immediately? This is a wonderful addition to their platform that
adds an extra 8 weeks.
Yeah. How could we not have already done that? What a horrible thing to go through. Sorry, you have to go back to work.
Okay, old is new again. Reintroduce, or well, they said introduce, but it's reintroduce. The Children's Fitness Tax Credit and the Children's Arts and Learning Tax Credit. Again, giving incentive for kids to do, for parents to put kids into extracurricular activities. Having the incentive there is good. But for the comparable, from the Department of Finance in 2017, approximately from the numbers that were available at the time of this report or study done by the Department of Finance. So in 2014, 43% of families with children claimed one of these two credits in 2014. The average tax credit that a family received per year, per family, was $129, and the average credit received per child per year was $64. And the note essentially was that the effective price effects provided by these credits were relatively small. So it's not kind of like the transit credit. It's not like because the credit was created that more parents were going to put their kids into sports and camps and art and art programs and stuff like that. It certainly benefited the people that already had their children in those kinds of programs, but it didn't do much to increase enrollment. And it's not, again, especially when the fitness tax credit initially only had a $500 limit, so you could only claim $500 worth of expenses, and the tax credit was 15%. So if you spent $500 for your child to be in sports, it saved you $75 in taxes. That's not substantial.
The thing that maybe you're trying to get to is families that can't afford to have their child in an expensive sport like hockey. They opt for something like basketball, where you already have the shoes, you already have the shorts. You're not saving anything because, well, you're saving the membership.
Yeah.
But you're saving a smaller amount, even more so than the example that you give.
That's right.
It's a good thing, but just from our perspective, we'd like to see it angled more towards the people that are going to be helped the most.
Yeah. And I know, there's people on the high end of the spectrum that would be like, well, I pay, I don't know, like $5,000 for my child to play on a rep team for hockey.
Wonderful.
Okay. You can afford to do that.
Yes.
You still probably don't need a tax credit for it.
One thing I'm unsure of, but could be an argument against what you're saying is, I know when I was in high school, we had someone that was living somewhere, was from another city that was living where we grew up, that was in high school with me because he was on a rep team. So it could be that the government would subsidize him living there, so it's not necessarily as expensive, right?
It would have been a billeting situation,
Yeah.
which they do all the time, say in the OHL, right?
Yes, exactly.
The kids, So that's a possibility, but I feel like that situation would be somewhat separate from this credit, I guess.
Oh, it's part of it, but
yes.
But yeah, I don't know what percentage part of it is. I mean, I can only remember one child or one teenager that was in my high school that was in that situation. Maybe I wasn't aware of others, but there were many other people that just played sports,
Yeah.
lived locally.
Okay, and then boosting RESPs. So they're talking about increasing the government's contribution on RESPs from 20% to 30% for every dollar invested, up to $2,500 a year. So yeah, right now, if you invest up to $2,500 in an RESP for your child, the government kicks in the Canada Education Savings Grant, which is 20% of that. So the maximum that the government contributes in a year is $500 on your $2,500. So this is talking about increasing that to 30%, which would put it up to $750 instead of $500. So again, the point that I reviewed here, and this was from StatsCan from 2017, was that 31.8% of families that were in the top quintile of income contributed to RESPs, whereas 9.8% of families in the bottom quintile of income earning in the country contributed to RESPs. So a family that was in the top 20% earning in the country was 4 times as likely to invest in an RESP than families that were in the lower income. So again, while this would benefit everybody, it's going to benefit people with higher income more because they have more capability to make these investments.
Yeah, it's true. Another comparable is RRSPs.
Yeah.
Those of us that don't have kids, this is not relevant to them, but
Right.
only in 2016, only 22% of us contributed towards RRSP.
Yep.
If the majority of us are not, the majority of us are probably also not able to or choosing not to put into an RRESP. I think that kind of gets to your point, but it's a gray. It's hard to say exactly how much of it is can't afford to do it, and some of it is
Decide not to. Yeah.
It's not giving lower income families hope that their kid will be able to go to post-secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point of it's helping everybody. So this is from a perspective, right? Some people would say that's great that we're helping everybody. From my perspective, I would rather see them change it so that it's either a boost so that it's a 1-to-1 contribution, or maybe it's a 75% to 1 contribution for those that are earning at a certain level. Let's say it's $80,000 as your family or less, something like that. That way you are specifically targeting the people that
need it more.
That need it more.
I'd be perfectly fine with that. Why should the percentage be the same across the board? Someone who's lower income should get a better grant.
Well,
right? That's kind of what you're looking at, right?
There is in here a difference. The extra 20% and the 10%. So they do have some points where you're getting more, but instead of doing the flat 30% increase, cut the flat 30% increase from people that are earning more than 80,000.
Increasing the age credit, which again I think is good. If the elderly have to pay less taxes, that's a good idea. Again, I didn't necessarily look into percentages on that, but there are a fair number of people that are over the age of 65 that qualify for the age credit because of their age and because of their income, because the age credit does shrink once you get over a certain threshold of income. But with the age credit where it is now and the number of people that are over the age of 65, that the only income they're earning is Canada Pension and Old Age Security, and that's it. They're not paying taxes anyways. So the increase to the age credit will help many people, but there are many people as well that it's not going to do anything for because they're already not paying taxes.
When I was reading this and I got to the point where they said it's phased out at 87,000, I thought, if you're that old and you're earning that much, wow,
you've done well for yourself.
You've done well for yourself. That's impressive.
Yep. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think the threshold where it cuts out right now is somewhere in the $60,000 to $65,000 range. So again, it does increase it. It does make it better. And yeah, maybe people over the age of 65 shouldn't be paying as much taxes as they were when they were working. But again, I think it helps a smaller percentage of people over the age of 65 than their numbers may seem to think it would. That's all. Okay, so repealing Justin Trudeau's tax increases and exempting spouses from Justin Trudeau's tax increases on family businesses. So there are studies that have been done on this tax change that show that the percentage of corporations that are actually receiving a benefit from those tax changes, or sorry, not a benefit, that are actually affected by those tax changes is less than 2%. Less than 2% of the corporations that have investments large enough that actually have enough assets to be affected by this rule. And those roughly 2% of corporations own or control like 88% of the assets that would be affected by those tax rules. So we're talking about making a major tax change to something that affects way less small business than the conservatives make it out to. So again,
It is often the case, though, with all the platforms and policies. You know, we thought this is a great thing. This will help small businesses, and then it comes back to bite them because the large corporation can afford to
pay for it themselves.
do this. Yes.
Yeah. Reducing red tape. So reduce the regulatory burden by 25% over 4 years we will implement a 2-for-1 rule whereby the government would have to get rid of 2 regulations before imposing any new one.
Yeah. I don't know where the 2-for-1 comes in and why is that a good idea. Let's just get rid of the bad regulations and bring in good regulations and keep the ones that should be there.
It sounds like a pizza order.
It sounds like you're in kindergarten.
Yeah, kind of. Again, yes, all for cutting red tape, but yeah, why not just review the regulations that are in existence and figure out a way to eliminate the ones that are redundant or don't benefit anybody or whatever first.
Yeah, or something
do that first.
Something that was put in place for a specific reason. That reason is no longer in place.
Right, get rid of it.
This was one of those things that made me laugh because this was one of those things that if I'm writing this, I don't include part of this. So they said 136,000 regulations, an increase of 4,300 since Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister. You put those numbers right next to each other and I go, well, that's actually kind of a small percentage.
It's like not even 4% over 4 years. So the regulations increased by 1% per year?
The world is complicated. We do need regulations, but let's get rid of the ones we don't need.
Yep. National Energy Corridor. How are you going to manage this one without further regulations? Going back to the regulations part.
Honestly, I don't want to touch this one because this is one of those situations to me where the two major parties are being hypocritical to each other, and I hate it because Scheer says that Trudeau is trying to force things through, and Trudeau is saying Scheer wants to force this through.
They both do.
You both can't have the same perspective on these things and say that the other is wrong.
They're both, there's similarities here. Build the Trans Mountain Pipeline. They both want to do that. Why else would the federal government have purchased the Trans Mountain Pipeline if not to build TMX? But at the same time, it's not just a situation of we're going to build it. There's steps you have to go through. That's what the government's been trying to do. The courts just keep coming back and saying, nope, you haven't done enough consultation. You haven't talked to the indigenous groups. You haven't talked to this. You haven't talked to that. You haven't figured it all out.
They're both in agreement.
They want to move forward with this. Let's move on.
They're saying that the other is wrong, but they're both in agreement that we should move forward with this kind of thing. And going back to the United States not needing us for our resources as much, this is one of those things that I point to.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't we want to move our electricity from one province to another?
Yeah, and I mentioned that in was it the Green Party platform episode, where there's technically no connection of the electrical grid between Ontario and Manitoba.
Right.
Now, I mean, maybe there's a connection through the states, but that involves a lot of cross-border regulatory, probably fees and things like that in order for the electricity to pass through to the other side of Canada. Whereas if the two provinces in particular could agree along with the federal government that we need to build a corridor of electrical lines, especially all this electricity that we're generating in Ontario, that's we're generating way more than we need to because of the Green Energy Ontario Act. If we could actually pass that electricity on to the West instead of quote unquote selling it to New York and quote unquote selling it to Michigan and quote unquote selling it to Quebec, It'd be a good thing that we're producing as much electricity as we are.
Yes.
Instead of it costing us money.
Let's help each other out.
Right.
That's what we're saying with regard to them both being hypocrites in that aspect. They both agree on this.
Yes.
But
they agree that they disagree that they agree.
Unless they change the law and the Supreme Court says that it's not against the Constitution, they're going to have to be able to go through the process. And this is probably not going to be within a one-term thing.
Not even close. Not even close. I don't see that happening at all. Economic immigration. I didn't really touch on anything in that section. Bringing in skilled labor, making sure that the people that are coming through the immigration process that we're accepting are, they have skills that essentially can be put to work right away. Okay.
Right.
And the liberals and conservatives are both saying that again.
Yeah. The two things I would say on this are it is already happening. It's just a question of what percentage do you want it to be at. The other side of it being, if you come from India and you are a certified doctor there, don't force someone to go through the whole process of becoming a doctor again. Find where the gaps are, make sure that they're up to the standards that we are, and let them be a doctor.
You want them to write an exam? Get them to write an exam.
Exactly.
Right? Like, done.
It's happening. We just need to do a better job.
Yep. Getting infrastructure built, prioritize infrastructure projects that will have maximum benefit to Canada's economy, and we will proceed with all projects previously committed to by the Liberal government.
I have to jump in here.
Yeah.
Because
go ahead.
As soon as this platform was released, it was all over the CBC. And I was like, what are you doing? The CBC was saying that they were going to cut infrastructure. It's right here in the plan saying that they're going to continue on with what the Liberals had promised.
I know.
It's just in
yes.
how you word it.
Right.
How they worded it
yes.
made it sound like conservatives bad.
Right.
But if you watch their shows, they're pushing hard on all of the political commentators and the politicians that they have on. They're asking the hard questions.
Well, and I feel like there's certain commentators that they wouldn't have on there if they were trying to push an agenda.
Yeah, that's right. They do a pretty good job of having people on both sides of the aisle sit in on and commentate.
Yep. Breaking down interprovincial trade barriers. Again, why isn't that already there? Why isn't there already essentially free trade between the provinces? Under the agriculture section, the only thing that I highlighted because of doing taxes was we'll work with provinces and farmers to make agri-stability more simple, predictable, bankable, and timely. And I think, thank God.
Yeah.
I've been dealing with that program for 12 years. It's a pain. If you can make it easier for farmers to know whether they're going to get some sort of, subsidy, I guess it is a subsidy. It's an income stabilization program. But if you can make it easier for a farmer to know whether they're going to get money out of the program, please do it. That's all I can say about that. Please do it. That would help me too. Fisheries. The only thing I had under fisheries was reducing the prevalence of ghost gear. So ghost gear entangles marine wildlife and significantly contributes to the world's oceans plastic problem. Fine.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. This is one of those things that it should be done, and I'm glad it's in their platform.
Done.
Good job, conservatives.
Good job, people. More innovation to fight climate change. Again, a lot of this stuff was in the conservative climate change plan episode, like the green investment standards. So, yes. So if Mike was here, the green investment standards, this is Andrew Scheer's carbon tax.
Right. I do want to say,
yeah,
when they came out with it, one of my big detractions for it, they have a little bit addressed. So my big worry was it's not doing anything because the polluters are still going to pollute because it's profitable for them, and they're going to invest in things that are quote unquote green technologies. They are going to certify what is a green technology, and it has to be in their own sector. With that said, it still doesn't do anything to actually stop them from polluting to make the money to make the investments.
That certification was in that climate change plan, though.
Did I miss it?
Yeah, you must have, because it was in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Mind you, that document came out in June. I wouldn't expect there to be a difference between that document and the platform, or very little.
I figured they heard the people that were.
No, that was in there.
Yeah.
That was in there. Which okay, But how do I guess from a regulation perspective or a certifying perspective, how do you certify something until it's done? Like, does that mean?
Yeah. Oh,
that,
yeah. You're talking research and development, right?
Yeah.
It's some of these things are theoretical.
Yeah. Like, do they have?
So you're
does
going
it
to say nope, that's theoretical. You can't do it until you prove.
do businesses?
How do you prove?
Does a business have to provide a plan to the government that says this is what we want to invest in, and the government has to stamp it and say yes, approved, or no, go back to the drawing board?
I think in this we just have to trust that they're going to be doing the right thing. That they're going to say, that's obviously a scam, and they're going to say, yeah, go ahead with it because there's a possibility that it's going to be the right thing to do.
You're trusting. I'd say in this situation, this is where it's less reliant on like the government at the MP level and at the minister level, and it's more reliant on the actual like public servant employees of the departments.
Yes,
which don't tend to change between governments.
Right. Maybe where you're going with this, maybe not, is those people are doing the work.
Yeah.
No matter who is in government, but sometimes those people can be forced to be inefficient because the government puts a rule in their place and they don't question it, or they're not allowed to question it.
That could be. Well, and the thing is that generally the minister of the portfolio, so is likely going to have final say on things anyways, assuming that they have time to have final say on every single thing that needs to be certified.
Right, they won't.
Which they won't.
People will come to them and say, here are the 10 things, those are good things, and they'll sign off on it.
Yep. And I guess at the same time, I mean, it doesn't necessarily, obviously it's only a platform document, so you can't put much in it, but we don't know what those standards are going to be either.
No, they might not know either.
Yeah.
They'll have to
figure that out. More help at home, Canadian culture and heritage. So make Canada's national museums free. That's a nice little thing.
I like that.
That's
idea.
okay. That's fine. Correctional systems. So make prison time meaningful. I liked this one. Tie parole eligibility to job skills training.
Absolutely.
Why not? I mean, they're in there. Get them. I mean, there's.
Yeah, it's productive for themselves as well as the world,
right?
In general, we want colleges to be cheaper for the average person.
Yeah,
this is the same situation.
Yeah,
we want it to be accessible to people.
Well, and I mean, if we're already spending the money that we are on the prison system, and especially if it didn't add a significant cost to add skills training while they're in prison, then why not do it? Mm-hmm. Right? For an ethical government, or as I called it, the S&C Lavalin section. So launch a judicial inquiry into the S&C Lavalin corruption scandal.
I'm not sure what comes out of it other than just
recommendations.
Yeah,
maybe. I feel like they think that there's going to be criminal charges, and I don't think there will be, or would be.
I mean, not from what we have heard so far. My understanding is the law that was in place is not a case where someone could go to prison or jail for breaking.
I mean, from what I read, I don't even think it technically carries a fine.
That's right.
So
it's just it's on your record as you did this.
Right.
That's my understanding. So they can't retroactively change that.
Right. So, and then introduce the No More Cover-Ups Act. What was it here? Oh, yeah. So we will allow the RCMP to make an application to the Supreme Court to access information protected by cabinet confidence. I was listening to another podcast, and I didn't necessarily understand what cabinet confidence is or was, or what was it? Essentially parliamentary confidence was either. I understand it a little better now. I'm going to plug another podcast right now. So if you were to listen to FU Politics, so that's Stephen Kersner and Ed the Sock. So he did an episode with Marlene Jennings on cabinet confidence, and it gave me a better understanding of what cabinet confidence is.
I think what you're saying, because you didn't really get to your point, is on the surface you might think that cabinet confidence is a bad thing, but without having cabinet confidence, ideas aren't going to be discussed. It's just going to mute the discussion.
Here's what I would compare it to. The big thing obviously happening in the States was the Mueller report. And then the Mueller report came out, and a large amount of it was redacted. And a lot of the reason why the information was redacted was because it's sensitive information that could be tied to cases that were that are being built or before the court somewhere else, or could involve international relations or things of that nature. That if that information got out, not only to the public but to the world, that it would be damaging to the United States.
Exactly.
Cabinet confidence is similar.
Yep.
Okay. There's certain. It's unfortunate to say it, but there's certain information that the public and therefore the world shouldn't know. And it kind of sounds tinfoil hatty, conspiracy theory, kind of like, oh, they're doing a whole bunch of stuff and they're trying to control our brains or whatever. But I mean, there's just certain things that we don't need to know as the average person.
And it doesn't have to be tinfoil hat situations. It can just be intelligence things that we don't want country X to know that they know, or that they don't know, or that we're going to do something and this is the reason why we're doing it. If it's just all out there, then
that's not good for us. If it's all out there, you
lose your tactical advantage of that.
Yeah. Indigenous groups. So I don't know. I mean, again, they're kind of included in little spots here and there throughout the platform, but you touched
on this in a previous podcast. Neither of us are in a position to be able to speak on their behalf, but we support. They need to have a voice. So I think it seems like all of the parties are saying they want to do this, but let's cut it. Let's get to it. Let's stop making it so hard for them to have a voice.
Yep. So one thing I highlighted here, which again I liked, as an example, we will pursue opportunities to allow eligible Indigenous communities to receive the federal gas tax fund directly. Great. Okay, more help for lawful firearms owners. Repeal Bill C-71. We did a whole episode on Bill C-71, and I agree. That's fine. Get rid of it.
I think Mike did a fantastic job of explaining that in that episode.
Yeah. Go listen to that episode. Right now. Actually, no, not right now. Finish this episode first, then go back and listen to that episode.
No, put this one on pause.
Okay.
Unless you're listening to this before the election, then listen through to this one.
Right. More help for our neighborhood, for our neighborhoods. Making it easier to prosecute gang members. Identify gangs in the criminal code similar to the manner in which terrorist organizations are currently identified. I mean, it's extreme, but it's not bad. I wouldn't say that gangs are necessarily to the same extent as a terrorist organization, but to label them similarly is okay by me.
Yeah, I mean, if they're doing illegal activities, again, it is generally covered under the law, but does it help to label them specifically? When a new one comes along, is there now a lag because they're not listed as one of our designated gangs?
Yeah,
I don't know.
How do you know for sure that a certain person is part of an actual gang or is part of the gang that you've labeled them as? I don't know, whatever.
It's a tough one to me because it seems like it just adds more to the government, adds more layers.
They have to cut two regulations to add this regulation.
No, I think that is actually after the Conservatives are finished with their adding of regulations. That's when that rule comes into place.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Okay. Make life sentences mean life behind bars. So in particular, they mention here the strictest sentence in Canadian law is life in prison with eligibility for parole after 25 years for first-degree murder. And then there are some criminals who should never be allowed to freely step foot on a Canadian street again. How do you make that determination? Like, if first-degree murder is kind of that essentially most heinous crime, it's like it becomes a judgment call, right? The judge makes the determination on sentencing whether the person should be eligible for parole or not.
Yeah, it's a real tough one because, I mean, the victim is gone forever.
Yeah.
Right. So do you then say the person that created that situation should be gone forever? At the same point, 25 years it's hard to imagine how long that actually is. And people can change, especially with the other things that are in this platform, as far as making it easier to rehabilitate yourself, better yourself, and come out of the justice system. Again, we trust the people in the justice system to make the right decision. If someone has done a heinous crime and doesn't feel bad about it 25 years later, they're not going to let them out. Whereas if 25 years later, again, that's a long time, if they have taken the steps to realize how horrible of a situation that they created, and now have taken the steps to want to come out of prison and say, I'm going to do these 10 things that are going to make the world better. Why are we going to say, sorry, justice system, you can't let that happen? And one of my thoughts, going back to the victims are gone forever, is you can't just simply say that some families want that criminal to be gone forever, because we also see other families that say, we recognize that that person made a mistake and we want to give them the opportunity to make right what was wrong. And we're just getting rid of both sides of the equation with this.
I didn't even necessarily think of it that way. Like victims' family statements can be very impactful.
Yeah.
I didn't even take that
and
that side of it into account.
They're taken into account with parole.
Yeah. Yeah, like eligibility of parole, right? Or like time frame before eligibility for parole. Yeah.
The other thing I want to add, and this may be a little bit controversial, I'll accept that. If we're going to say life without parole, why don't we just take it one step further and implement capital punishment? I believe the majority of us are against it.
Yeah, I would think so too.
But isn't that basically what you're doing? You're saying you have no hope. No matter what you do, you are never going to be worth releasing.
Well, I guess, I mean, a potential argument in favor of that is if somebody commits a crime at 25 years of age that would put them behind bars for life, and they live for another 50 years, we're paying for that person to be in prison for 50 years. Whereas if we were to re-implement, capital punishment, execution, whatever, instead of that person being in prison for 50 years, they went through the process in 5 years. That would save a lot of money. If the government's trying to save money, why wouldn't? I mean, But anyways,
To be clear, we are both in agreement. We're not pushing for capital punishment.
No, not
it's
even
just
close.
a theoretical. Like if you're not, then when does someone then take the next step and say, let's just implement it?
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope, people.
Slippery slope, people. Now, I didn't highlight it, but I know you have a note on it. So it was the expanding rural broadband.
Yeah, so I can't speak to it in its current state, but I was formerly employed by one of the major businesses in this sector, and they were already working on this. They recognized that rural people will give them money for broadband, so they were working on using the cell towers to have rural high speed. So I'm a little unclear exactly what this is. I fully agree with it. If the companies are not wanting to, then we need to invest in the infrastructure. But a few years ago, they were investing in the infrastructure. The internet is a necessity nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, yes, there are people that live without it, but it's for the betterment of the whole country if we have access to it.
I need my cat videos. More help for the North. So allow the territories to keep their resource revenues, but only once the budget is balanced. I guess this is one of those things where the territories are not treated the same as the provinces, and they probably should have already been, benefiting from the revenue that gets generated from their natural resources.
Yeah, this was one of those things that I read and went, wait, what? They're not already?
Yeah.
But I guess as an average citizen, I wouldn't know that.
More for your health. So investing $1.5 billion over 4 years to renew and expand medical imaging equipment. So purchasing new MRI machines, CT machines, so for CAT scans and such. We kind of need that. That's infrastructure spending we need. So yeah, exactly. I mean, as long as it means that it's because there is a belief in Ontario that a 2-tier healthcare system is trying to be built by the current PC party. As long as this kind of infrastructure spending is going into the public health system, then that's good. So as long as this is going to like the hospitals and stuff like that, cool. That's what I want to see.
But the Blue Jays need their CT scans right away. Moving on.
Yeah. Introduce the Cyberbullying Accountability Act. It sounds good, but...
It sounds good. This was one of those things that made me say, isn't it already taken care of in the laws? Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to dig deep into it as far as verbal abuse, where that...
It says the Cyberbullying Accountability Act will clarify that if a bully is outside of Canada and the victim is in Canada, the offense occurred in Canada. Let's say if whatever the crime is would involve a situation where a person would be charged and if convicted would go to prison. And we're talking about a person that's outside of Canada. Now you're talking about extradition treaties where wherever the country is that person is from has to agree to send that person to Canada.
Right. The argument I'd make against you is let's put it on the books.
Put it on the books, but if the suspect is outside of the country, probably don't expect much to happen, is all I would say. It's awareness of the situation, which is good. Help for veterans. It's such a tough subject for me.
There's one thing I definitely want to touch on. If you're going past this quickly,
I don't necessarily want to go past it quickly because it deserves a certain level of respect. But I feel like both parties have disrespected veterans.
Yeah, let's get beyond that because I think we can agree they both have their black eyes when it comes to our veterans. From my perspective, I stopped at review and improve the transition of services rules. This one is fantastic, in my opinion. Again, can't believe we don't already have this in place, and kudos for them for including this. When you are going from one benefit to another benefit, until that second benefit comes into place, right now you're high and dry.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of that.
Yeah.
That first benefit should keep on paying until you are through the process of applying for that second benefit. We're the Canadian government. We are helping you out. Let's not drop you on the street corner until you can figure it out or until you get the second benefit.
They shouldn't get cut off from the benefits that they're receiving until it's known that they've clearly been transferred to whatever the next program is.
Right.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, this probably gets back to what I was saying about where the people that are on the front lines know that this is how it should be done. It just needs to get to the politicians so that it can be written. And I'm glad that they're finally doing that.
Yeah. I guess the other thing I highlighted here, and maybe I'll keep this in, maybe I won't, was the establish guidelines and fund a program to provide service dogs.
I like that too.
And the reason I highlighted that one was that I know a couple of people that used to be in the service that have looked into that as an option. And if that was an option where the government or their benefits through Veterans Affairs covered the cost of that would be great. That's it's a healthcare service. More strength abroad. So this is kind of the foreign policy stuff. I mean, the first one I highlighted that it's like, does this really need to be in the platform? Recognize that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Why does it matter? Why does it matter if we think that if we support that Jerusalem should be the capital of Israel?
Well, the Americans will be happy.
Oh, great!
But to get beyond that, this is one of those. From a perspective point of view, you're going to have listeners that will think this is wonderful.
Yeah.
You're going to have listeners that will be like you and say, "What does it matter?" So, yeah,
padding the platform.
It's just a different perspective.
Yeah.
But they have it in there. That's their perspective.
Yes. Okay. Now I didn't highlight it, but you had a comment about the Asian Infrastructure Bank.
Yeah, this was one of those things that when they came out with the platforms and they were being questioned about how they're going to pay for it, because there are a lot of things on here that they're wanting to add to the books as far as investing and credits and things like that. They were saying this was one of the ways that we're going to get money back, withdrawing from the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. But when you look at it, like for this being a bullet point, the amount of money that is, let's do it. But such a small drop in the bucket. You mentioned this many times in previous podcasts, how they get stuck on something and you say that's 0.1% of the budget. I don't know what percentage this is.
That's exactly that. It's less than 0.1%.
Yeah.
$256 million investment when the federal revenues right now, I think I've said before, was like around 320 or 325 billion dollars. So this is less than 0.1%.
Yeah. So it's one of those situations where it's nice that it's in there, but they can't go in front of the media and say, this is one of our top 5 things that is going to allow us to pay for all these things. It's not.
Oh, okay. So this is going to be one of those things, one of those big things that the conservatives are saying is going to help them not only pay for what they have in the platform, but to help balance the budget.
Yeah, I think
in 5 years. Reprioritize foreign aid, cut overall aid by 25%, and also reprioritizing it to where it will make more of a difference, because apparently we do send quite a bit of money to countries that don't necessarily need it. Although I could say that there might be some oversimplification to it, because the platform says Justin Trudeau sends $2.2 billion in foreign aid to middle and upper income countries like Argentina, Barbados, Brazil, China, Italy, Mexico, and Turkey. I feel like some of those countries aren't like the others, and at the same time, some of that foreign aid spending has probably been around for a long time. And the other problem is that it's saying, okay, well, we send this money to these countries, but why are we sending the money to those countries? It's not necessarily like, well, we're just giving it to the Argentinian government or the Mexican government. It might be paying for certain programs that will help with, maybe it has something to do with helping the immigration process for people that are trying to come from those countries to come to Canada. I don't know if that's included in those figures or not.
Along the similar note, some of the examples, the Rohingya and the Syrians, they're fleeing their government. So we don't want to give money to their governments. Those governments are below the threshold.
Yeah.
We don't want to give money to those governments. We want to give money to their neighbors so that they can help those people. Their neighbors are above the threshold. Or not necessarily to the governments, but let's say the Red Cross that's in those countries. We want to give it to those helping nonprofits.
Right.
I want to give some perspective with regard to the numbers here.
Sure.
First off, the government wants to use an index that basically judges how well off the countries are. Not necessarily monetarily, but like humanitarian index. And so in their platform, they mention upper and middle. They've chosen a number of 0.6. Mm-hmm. And the experts say it's an arbitrary round number. When you look at the list, it is kind of funny because 0.6 is in the middle of the middle. So they're not saying they don't want to help middle class or the middle of the index. The world as a whole or as an average is 0.728. So there's some context there. So they want to stop helping the people that are below the average. Mm-hmm. And then also to add, Canada right now, we are so fortunate to live in this country. The index rating for our country is 0.926. So we're pretty high up there. Is it wrong to expect that we would want to help people that are below the world average? Or do we want to set the bar at 0.6?
I saw that they put the acronym in there, the HDI acronym. Did they mention what that is? Is it Human Development Index or something like that?
I looked it up, but it's slipping my mind.
Okay.
But it is, I want to say it's Humanitarian Development Index.
Okay.
Something like that.
And it's obviously a scale of 0 to 1. Although I guess it does say, though, that all current funding agreements would continue to be funded in the countries with an HDI below 0.6 and regional funding for Africa. So they wouldn't necessarily change the funding that already goes to the countries that are below that point, but they wouldn't necessarily increase the funding to the countries that are below that point.
Well, and that's why I mention Syria and Myanmar, because in most people's opinion, genocide needs to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And you can't take care of it within the countries that have those low indexes. That's why they have those low indexes. You need to seek outside sources of addressing them.
Yeah. Which involves foreign aid.
A bit of context for you. Back in the 1950s, our government, under Lester B. Pearson, with the UN, came up with a goal or a target for our countries to put aside 0.7% of our GDP and put it towards foreign aid.
Right.
Can you guess where we were at recently?
Oh, I can't remember. I know we're still under the 0.7, I think, though.
Oh, yes, we are.
Yeah, we're like 0.2.
Yeah, 0.28.
Yeah.
So I understand the governments have to find somewhere to pay for the things that they want to add. And again, from a person's perspective, they might say, let's help our local people first.
Yeah.
I think we're like 16 out of 19 as far as the upper countries.
I think it's 18. I think it's 18 out of 19. We're really low.
Yeah, we're pretty low.
Yeah, I remember. I do remember reading that somewhere. Yes. I think it was to do with the OECD countries that we're like really low when it comes to foreign aid out of the OECD countries. Depoliticize military procurement. Yeah. I mean, let's stop politicizing the military. Just get what they need, which goes to the next page about replacing Canada's CF-18s. It's true. I mean, the F-35 situation was an absolute disaster that kept getting dragged on and on and on and on and on. And then we bought 40-year-old planes.
Yep. I mean, when we bought 40-year-old planes, I'm pretty sure that everyone was in agreement that it was like, wait, what?
Just
Canada, like we're doing that?
Just like the submarines, where one of them caught fire before it even got here. Man,
So let's go back to the facilitate the return of young children of terrorists detained overseas.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
I fully agree with this. Now, stop demonizing Omar. I mean, wouldn't he fall under this?
Yes, he would totally fall under this. Again, see, man, in comparison to other points in the platform, it's like it's such a small little thing, but you're right. That's it's that situation all over. It is that situation.
Now, I hate to point it out as a negative thing because we're in agreement.
Yeah.
So it's good that it's in their platform. Now stop openly saying that this was something that the Liberals did wrong when it was
both parties. Both parties were at fault for the Omar Khadr situation. Okay, so then fiscal overview, balance the budget within 5 years. What a coincidence it's outside of their mandate if they win a majority.
Yeah, and there are, as much as they all are on each other for this kind of thing, they're all guilty of it. There are many things that are in this platform that they put 5 years on. So
yeah. It's like they do it on purpose.
They do it on purpose. Now, in their defense, there are some things that you just can't do that fast.
Yes.
And they have so many things in this platform that there is no way you can do it all within 5 years.
Right. Introduce balanced budget legislation. Got any opinion on that? I mean, should we keep a balanced budget? Probably, but it's not realistic all the time.
I'm going to kind of touch on something that's elsewhere in here, but as far as the putting a limit on increased spending, where you got to cut $2 for every dollar you spend, they better include something in there for emergencies or downturn of economies, because sometimes it's right to spend and sometimes it's wrong to spend.
Yeah. Like, it's true. Right now, our deficits should probably be smaller than they have been.
Yes. We have had times over the last 2 decades where we should have reduced the spending, reduced the debt.
Yeah.
If you look back for the last 40 years, we've only been increasing it whenever there's a recession.
Yeah.
But it all circles back to, you can't put on the books a law that says governments can't increase spending.
Right. Because it doesn't prepare for all eventualities. Yeah, require saving proposals for new government spending. Is that what you were talking about? Like the $2 for $1 or whatever. They even call it a new conservative government will implement a pay-go or pay-as-you-go budget rule for all new spending. I'm like, it's not a cell phone plan. It's a budget. It's a federal budget. Listen, there's things in this country that we need to spend money on. We need to spend money on on highways or on, this infrastructure spending that, they're talking about being a big thing in this platform. So if we get to a balanced budget or surpluses, it shouldn't necessarily be like, okay, we can take that excess money and put it on the debt. We can take that and figure out new spending without going into a deficit short term, to take into account that it's not the 1960s anymore. We need to improve this country the way that we did back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. That smart spending, right?
Yeah, experts agree that the best way that the government can affect this kind of change is through infrastructure spending.
Yeah. They go through their numbers. So again, I like the fact that the numbers are here, just like I like the fact that the Liberals had the numbers in their platform, because it gives you at least something to view. There's a tangible feeling to it. I mean, like you said earlier, though, the problem is outside of say 3 or 4 years, the projections can get murky.
Very murky.
The projections here and the projections in the Liberal platform, same. They don't account for what if another recession similar to the 2008 recession happens in the next 4 or 5 years.
So to take that one step further, again, many governments do this. They front end the lower amount of spending and back end the higher amount of spending.
Yeah.
So if you go to their budget, they show that later on where it is murky, where it's high uncertainty, the budget is less balanced. Well, what happens if we are in a bad situation? That balance is going to be lost.
Yep.
Because you're already putting yourself in a bad situation, and now it's worse. And this won't, I'm not saying this will happen, but this does sometimes happen where they get to their third year and they have to make sure that they hit their budget target. So they end up cutting some of the promises that they said that they would do in order to make it so that they're going into the next election with a balanced budget.
Because they're trying to get reelected.
Yeah.
And they said that they said one of their goals is to balance the budget, and if they can do it faster than 5 years and not cause too many people to get upset at them, then they'll do it.
Yeah. So for them, I just worry that they're putting themselves in a bad situation where 4 years from now, if they are in power and trying to get reelected, they're going to have a lot of negatives against them.
Yep.
I think they might just be putting too much risk there for themselves.
Save on non-personnel operating expenses like consultants. They probably. I don't think they're necessarily wrong here, because they say often consultants are brought in to replace our public servants who do excellent work already. In my eyes, you hire a consultant when you feel that you don't have the staff that are qualified to do what you need that consultant to do.
Or when you have a friend that is in the field and you want to give them some kickback.
Well, yes, yeah,
yes,
okay, that happens too. Fair enough.
But I agree with you. Like, we don't need to have experts on certain things all the time. On the books. So
well, exactly.
If they're not covered under our civil servants, then we do need them.
Yeah. And then this is also, again, where they bring in the real estate. So gradually reducing the footprint of federal government real estate. Government of Canada owns the largest and most diverse portfolio of real estate in the country with 37,000 buildings. Reducing the need for these buildings could save the government rent and potentially free them up for alternative development. That's what I was confused, though, because it says they own 37,000 buildings.
But then
it could save them rent?
Yeah, you caught that too, huh?
They're renting buildings that they own?
I certainly hope that the government is not doing this to themselves. The thing that it would save them also is the utility costs. But that's not what they're saying.
No, it's not. It's not. And that would probably save more than the rent.
I don't know.
I feel like the rent is, because it's just different departments in the government, it would just be a line item. It doesn't necessarily cost any money, but whatever. Make large technology companies pay their fair share. So 3% tax on revenues of businesses that provide a social media platform, search engine, or an online marketplace to Canadians. What companies are they talking about? Why didn't they just say Facebook, Google, Amazon?
I'm glad you mentioned that. I find humor in the fact that they're going after Amazon.
Yeah.
But their platform, uses Amazon Web Services.
Wait, what?
Yep.
What
That's
do you-
where
where
this
did-
document is hosted.
Oh.
On Amazon Web Services.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
You got to host it somewhere.
Yeah, you gotta- and-
give it to the big guys.
Well, the guys that know how to do it, right?
Yes,
This
yeah.
episode not sponsored by Amazon Web Services.
Certainly not.
So yeah, 3% tax. So, but they're talking about a 3% tax on revenues, not profits, which makes sense because the problem we obviously have in international tax law right now is that companies just shuffle their profits to other countries and pay very low taxes.
Yep.
So tax the revenues instead.
Yeah, anything we can do in that aspect is good. It may be difficult, but that doesn't mean we don't step up to the challenge.
That's essentially all I had. Okay, how I want to finish this episode, kind of as a post platform review in review, because now this will be our last episode for the platforms. We're not covering the PPC, we're not covering the block. I guess the question I would ask is, of the 4 parties that we've reviewed, and this is not an endorsement situation, which one of the 4 do you think either you agree with the most or has the most points in it that are favorable to you?
I would say, like most people in Canada that are not specifically for one party or another party,
Yeah.
I cannot say.
Okay.
There is a lot of good in each of the platforms, and then there are a couple things that I disagree with. So I'm having difficulty this time around, and will refuse to endorse a party.
Okay. Good choice. Spoken like a politician.
Don't look at me, look that way.
Yeah, I mean,
There's a lot of
I'm
good
in the
things
same
in this
boat.
platform.
Yeah, I like I said, I agree. There's good things in the conservative platform. I don't know if there's enough good things in here for me to consider voting conservative, but I don't know if there's enough good things in any of the platforms for me to have made a determination yet.
Well,
this is
they
what
all
I was
have-
waiting for.
And it's not just within the platform. There are things outside of the platform that
Yeah.
you're taking into consideration as negatives against them.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Because
Like
you can't
what-
just look at the platform.
That's right. Like what the Liberals have done over the last 4 years. There's things that they've done that have been good, and there's things that they've done that haven't been good. So, I mean, I have to factor that into whether I think the Liberals deserve to have another mandate or not. But yeah, I was waiting for this platform to come out with it being the last platform because it's like I'm running out of time to make a decision. Like I feel like I need to vote now, and I still don't know who I want to vote for.
Interesting.
So, because I want to vote, I don't want to be one of those people that's like, well, I didn't have a chance to, so I didn't go.
So far, provincially, municipally, and federally, I've only not voted one time. It was recent.
Yeah. So, you know what? I think my final note on this, since this is the last episode we'll have out technically before the polls close, is just vote. Okay? I mean, should you make an informed decision? Absolutely. But it's difficult to make an informed decision. I think in the grand scheme of things, get out and vote.
Yeah. I find with my wife, who is much less interested in it than we are, and I would say is more typical to Canadians, what's beneficial is to find one of those web pages or find someone that can give you, here's the stances of each of the parties on all of these major things. Find out what your major interests are, and then figure out, which one you align better with.
Yeah.
But vote.
Yep.
If it's just on 3 topics, vote on those 3 topics.
Yeah.
If it's 20 topics, vote on 20 topics.
There's the Vote Compass website.
Yeah.
That's one of the major ones right now. It's a CBC website. I mean, again, depending on how you feel about the CBC, but even still, it's a good judge for you to answer a few questions, and it basically tells you kind of on a percentage basis. It's like you lean towards such and such a party. So, yeah, if you're not sure, use something like that. Figure out based on how you feel about certain situations what party would most likely benefit you to vote for, and go vote. Simple as that. I think that's where we need to end this. Good luck to all those voters out there. Make sure you cast your ballot. Get your vote out there. Doesn't matter what party it is. We're still not endorsing anybody, even though Mike endorsed the Green Party.
And Don't stop listening to Poutine politics just because the election is over. They are going to have plenty of other topics that are going to be insightful and worthwhile, worth your listen.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try and get out of the Ontario centric viewpoint as much as I can, because I live in Ontario. That's the difficult thing, is that obviously that's what affects us the most here when we're recording.
You need to listen, or you need to read that Winnipeg newspaper you were talking
Yeah,
about.
the Winnipeg Free Press. Yeah, that's true. I need to get onto like the different provincial subreddits so that I get news stories from different provinces. So yeah, we're definitely going to try and expand our political viewpoint to other provinces, and obviously some social issues as well. We've had some episodes on social issues. We're going to get back to those with the election being over as well. So keep on listening. Don't be a stranger. Thanks for listening. My name's Adam.
My name is Mark.
Not Mike. Have a good one.
So I want to let you know, or I have a question for you. What do you think is the worst part about me guest co-hosting this? I'll tell you.
Okay, I was going to say I don't know.
I don't get to listen to Mike's perspective on it.
Oh, yeah, okay, fair enough.
Hello, listeners. Had to take a 7-day IR stint. Family came in early for Thanksgiving. Glad to call up Mark from the miners. And I think his war is up to snuff. Hopefully I'm not the next Wally Pip. Don't have a lot of time, so basically I'll say this for the PC political platform. Listen, guys, you whiffed on veterans, you whiffed on gun control, and democracy, which are fastballs for us right-wingers. The curveballs of youth, trade, agriculture, childcare, education, senior infrastructure, indigenous affairs, that's not even off the shoulders there, buds. But the breaking ball of fiscal responsibility is to lower taxes, balance the budget by reducing services. I mean, your plan is to reduce cubicle sizes? That's the game plan? All right. That's swing and a miss completely. Surely this can't be the best we offer. Anyway, till next time, this is Mike for Poutine Politics.